So today we're here with Greg Carlos from Dr. Balcony. Dr. Balcony is involved in a lot of work in Southern California, especially as it relates to two Senate bills that are very important for property owners. And today's topic is going to be very relevant for property owners. We're going to find out what kind of property owners are affected, what they need to do, and whatnot. So I'd like to start off by introducing Greg here. Greg, can you tell us about yourself and Dr. Balcony and what you guys do, generally speaking?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having us, or for having me. So, I'm the vice president at Dr. Balcony. We're a tech engineering firm that focuses solely on the SB 721 and SB 326 ordinances. These ordinances pertain to balcony inspections. They're called the balcony laws. Most people know them as that. And yeah, that's the only thing we focus on. We're trying to get as many people as possible in compliance, by the end of the year. And yeah.
Wonderful. So you mentioned two bills, SB 721, SB 326. Can you tell us what the difference is between the two Senate bills?
Yeah, of course. So the SB 721 is going to be for apartments, for any apartments with three or more units. The SB 326 is going to be for condos and HOAs. Also, the same requisite of three or more units, but that's going to be the difference. There's some differences as well in the inspection process.
Okay, very good. So tell me a little bit about Dr. Balcony. So how long have you guys been around? Do you guys just do inspections or the work?
Yeah, so when the law originally, was passed, the ordinance actually said that you couldn't have the same company doing the inspections as the actual work itself. So we've kept that system in place. In our company, it has since then been amended, and companies can do both because there weren't enough companies to do the actual inspections. Everyone was waiting for the juicy part, which was the construction. But we've kept the same system in place. We're an engineering firm, so we do the inspections. If needed, we can help with the architectural work as well. But we just focus on the inspections. We've been around since 2022, I believe. So this division was established solely for the purpose of the SB 721, SB 326. Our senior engineer has been doing this for over 30 years or so. The Dr. Balcony side has been around for a couple years now.
Great. Sounds like a lot of experience. So before we get into the nuts and bolts and everything, let's talk about why these bills were introduced, right? Especially in California where there's constantly laws coming out. What was the inspiration behind this?
Yeah, so tragically in 2015, there was an incident where 13 young adults were partying on a balcony, and tragically the balcony collapsed, and I believe seven of them tragically passed away, and the other six were seriously injured. So after further investigation, they found that the reason for this was that the uh, balcony collapsed due to dry rot, and the balcony was only 9 years old. So a lot of people would consider this a fairly new building.
9 years is not
When
that
you
long.
haven't, yeah, 100%. So at a couple of years later, I believe in 2017, 2018, that's when they passed the SB 721, and soon thereafter the SB 326.
Okay. Now, prior to these two Senate bills, were there any rules in place that you had to inspect balconies and walkways like this, or not really?
Yeah, so there's the, yearly inspections that happen, the fire code inspections, the
Right.
city inspections, but there wasn't anything that focused on balconies and any exterior elevated elements. So, especially not a deep dive into, the actual state of these elements because, a lot of things are covered up inside of the stucco, inside the actual balcony itself. So, this is the first ordinance of its kind where it's, focused on this and it's going to be a thorough inspection.
Right. Because it makes sense. I mean, as a owner or property manager, you're not necessarily getting to look at all the balconies, maybe 3 stories up, even 2 stories up. You're not getting to get like close visual. You may be going in the unit to do repairs, but you've got a plumber, for example, doing plumbing work. He's not going to look at that balcony. And unless something significant, maybe if the railing is very loose or somehow the balcony itself is moving around, you might get some indication, but by then it may be maybe too late, right? I mean, something could be happening at any time.
Exactly. Most owners that we've dealt with, they tell us, hey, I haven't worked on my balconies in, since 1963 when the building was made, or,
Right.
1970. So, they'll do some waterproofing here and there, but not any sort of rigorous inspection or, rebuilding. So yeah, it's definitely time that we have these inspections take place.
I think so. It really, I mean, loss of life is a tragedy, and so as owners, business owners, and property owners, we don't necessarily like a lot of laws in place, but I think this law arguably could be a very good thing, right? Because, I mean, you're looking at potential lawsuits from loss of life or serious bodily injury from people falling down from balconies. And most people don't necessarily inspect, right? It's more of a reactive situation where if something leaks or breaks, then you send someone out to take a look at it, but you're not necessarily going out and visually inspecting the property once a year. At least most people probably are not. I know property managers, everyone's different, but it's not really the case. So SB 721 and 326. So this applies to, tell us what kind of properties. You said one applies to condos, the other one to apartment buildings. So generally all of them, or you said maybe a certain minimum number of units?
Yeah, so any property with any apartments or condos, HOAs, with three or more units, and they must have an exterior elevated element. So, an exterior elevated element is anything that is on the exterior of your building. It is more than 6 feet off the ground, has a walking surface. The walking surface is meant to be walked on and is reliant partially or wholly on wood for its structural support and stability. That's going to be an exterior elevated element. So if you have a building that has three or more units and it has any sort of exterior elevated elements, you're going to be subject to this ordinance.
So any exterior elevator element, stairs, balconies, anything you walk on. And I noticed you said something that it's either partially or wholly dependent on wood. So if it's made out of stainless, steel, you wouldn't be, you
Yes.
know,
So if it's concrete or steel, you're going to be exempt.
okay,
Typically, I would still double check with either your local jurisdiction or contact, a company. You can call us, make sure. But if the landing of the walkway, like I said, anything that you're supposed to walk on that is above 6 feet off the ground has any sort of wood. Sometimes it's hidden and it's inside of the stucco. But if you think it might have some wood, double check. You don't want to not comply with this ordinance.
okay. So the ordinance, you just told us what kind of buildings the ordinance apply to. So what does a owner need to do? What's the rule or what's the requirement?
Yeah, so the first step is to have an inspection by the end of this year. So January 1st, 2025 is the deadline for this inspection. So it really depends on the results of your inspections. But the first step would be to have an inspection done. And then after that, the company that you work with will let you know what the next steps are.
Okay. Tell us who can inspect. Can I have a contractor, my property manager? Who can inspect based on these two Senate bills?
Yeah, so for the SB 326, it's only a structural engineer or an architect. For the SB 721 ordinance for apartments, there's a couple more people that can do these inspections. So you have your structural engineer, you have your architect, and then there are also certified home inspectors and certified contractors that they hold specific licenses that are meant for this, that are able to do these inspections as well.
Got it. And you do really want someone who isn't just holds a contractor's license doing this. You need someone who really understands the structural elements of a building, correct? I mean, you've got things that, like you said, you may not be able to see from the outside. You may have to cut into the stucco or something to figure that out, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the ordinance also mentions that they must have, I believe, more than 5 years of experience in the field. So,
Okay.
that's also to prevent someone that, maybe doesn't have experience in this, but has the title from actually, conducting the inspections.
Okay. So these two Senate bills require certain types of buildings to be inspected. And the deadline to inspect those buildings is at the end of this year, December 31st of 2024. So let's say there was an inspection. Do all the exterior elevated elements need to be inspected, or is it just some of them needs to be inspected? How does that work?
No, that's a great question. So The ordinances are a little different where the SB 326 ordinance for condos and HOAs is going to require 95% confidence rate. Typically, they're going to inspect 100% of your exterior elevator elements. So, almost any walkway, balcony, stairway is going to be subject to that inspection for the HOA as a whole. For the SB 721, it only calls for 15% of each exterior elevated element to be inspected. So 15% of your balconies, 15% of your walkways, 15% of your stairways. So they're really different. And when people ask why the difference, we believe that it's because HOAs are individually owned, so an owner can work on their balcony, themselves without the rest of the building, working on their balconies. For the SB 721, typically it's one owner. He's going to work on the building as a whole. The building is under one assessor parcel number, so typically it's one project. So yeah.
Okay, so this brings up a question from what you said earlier. You said if it's made of concrete, let's say in steel, this rule or Senate bill does not apply. Does that mean if I've got an apartment building with, let's say, balconies that exceed 6 feet, but I know for sure that they're concrete and steel, do I still need to get an inspection to verify that it's concrete and steel, or would it just not have to even deal with this and just ignore this requirement at this point?
Yeah, no. So the ordinance doesn't say that you have to have an inspection, so I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Typically, like I said, it's only if you have any wood. That's the only thing that is mentioned on there that is mandatory.
Okay.
So no.
So, but again, like most owners, you haven't really built the building. So if you're not sure, it's a great idea to get checked out.
Exactly. If you have stucco under, typically you're going to have wood on the
Okay.
inside. So yeah, might as well be safe than be penalized.
Absolutely. So, Greg, you mentioned that for Senate Bill 326, which applies to condos, does that mean each condo unit owner needs to conduct their own inspection, or does the HOA have to do that? Can you tell us what needs to be done in that situation?
Yeah, no. So typically, the HOA as a whole is going to do the inspections. Technically, the ordinance doesn't say you have to do it one way or another. The way that we've always done it is going to be the HOA as a whole. We have to do the building as a whole. So, yeah.
Okay. So I would imagine the HOA itself would pay for the inspections and the service as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. So we
Okay.
we do typically the way that we work with HOAs, we'll send them the bid. Sometimes we'll speak with in their monthly meetings, and the HOA usually gets about two or three bids, makes a decision, and lets us know if we were chosen. We'll go out there and do the uh, inspections for the HOA as a whole, and that's it.
So I want to kind of go back real quickly to something we talked about before we started, which was these two Senate bills, which are commonly known as the balcony inspection laws. Do many apartment building owners or condo building owners or unit owners know about this law?
Not really. So I remember maybe about a year ago or so when we would go to these expos, our hook to people would be, hey, have you even heard about these laws? And most people, I want to say 90% of people hadn't. Now we have more people that tell us, hey, we've heard about this, we need to get on this. But even then, we're still estimating that more than half of people haven't even heard about these ordinances. We just recently started getting into some regions of California, such as Mount Shasta, all the way in Northern California. And a lot of these people are telling us, hey, our local jurisdiction didn't notify us until right now. And yeah, they're barely becoming aware of this now.
And so I would venture to guess most people who go to those expos, it's a small minority of owners. So the vast majority of apartment building owners are these mom and pop, maybe elderly who don't necessarily keep up with all the rules and ever changing rules, especially in California. So unless they get notified that maybe by a local jurisdiction, they don't realize what's happening, right? I mean,
Yeah, 100%. We've been petitioning to certain local jurisdictions to send out notices, to homeowners and let them know, make them aware that, hey, this is going to happen in January 1st, 2025. It's not really fair, right? If they were never even notified that they could be penalized for not complying with this inspection. So, yeah, 100%. There needs to be more awareness, and local jurisdictions need to do a good job of letting their homeowners know, apartment owners know that these inspections are due in less than 6 months now.
Wow. So these inspections are due by the end of this year, and we'll get into some of that more later. But what is the penalty? And when I read this the first time, I was blown away. What's the penalty for not complying with this?
Yeah, so technically the law does give that authority to your local jurisdiction to enforce that, but the only penalty that is mentioned on the ordinance is $100 to $500 per day of noncompliance, which
Per day.
it's hefty. Yeah.
Up to 500. And some jurisdictions will see this as a revenue collection opportunity. And so, imagine if you're a property owner, an apartment building owner, you're relying on a lot of apartment building owners are mom and pop, like we said. They rely on this little bit of income, maybe not necessarily always a lot of income for their retirement. And so all of a sudden, if they don't know about a rule that's changes, by the way, there was a rule that applied to you, you didn't comply. Now you owe potentially $500 a day worth of penalties.
Exactly, 100%. And we've, thought about this, and it's going to be chaotic for these people that didn't know about this ordinance and they find about it in January 1st, 2025. And at that point, they're going to be in a hurry to try to find these, maybe 15 companies out here that are doing these inspections and trying to get them booked out as soon as possible. But there's going to be a demand that's going to be through the roof and no one's going to be able to keep up with.
Now, do you have an estimate approximately how many properties in California are subject to this rule? Or
Yeah,
these rules,
so
I should say.
believe we believe that it's over 500,000 properties that are
Units or properties?
properties.
500,000 properties in California would potentially be impacted by these two Senate bills.
Yeah, that's just our calculations.
Right.
We've reached out, like I said, to multiple local jurisdictions, trying to get a count. Obviously we can't reach out to all of them. There's no concrete number, but through our calculations, yes, over 500,000 properties.
Wow. So going back to Senate Bill 721, you mentioned 15% of the exterior elevated elements need to be inspected, but it's probably better just to have it all inspected, right? I mean, or do you? How does that work? Do you guys determine which 15%, or do you just? What is your personal policy at the company?
Yeah, so what we do as a company, we're always going to do a little more than 15%. However, it's really dependent on what we find with that initial, 15, 20%. Obviously, if you have two balconies, you do one, you're already at 50%, you're in compliance. The way that the ordinance is written is that 15% is going to be representative of the rest of the building as a whole. Most companies, I believe, do around that 15% mark, just because, hey, if two of your balconies have rotted wood, chances are the rest of them are probably going to have that as well. Typically, during the time of construction is where they're going to, open the rest of them up and see if they have if the extent of damage also applies to them. However, the way that we choose them is that we're going to randomly select them. If the owner has a certain balcony or walkway that is of concern to them, then we will definitely check that one out. But we're always going to look for, any outliers. If we see any water staining, any big cracks, any visible rotting or rusting, that's going to be the ones that we focus on.
Interesting. So now the rules require that they be inspected by end of this year. Does that mean they also need to be repaired if there's any issues by end of this year, or do you have some time after that?
Just the inspection has to be done by the end of this year.
Okay.
Then, dependent on your results, that's your timeline. Every property has a different timeline for the actual results, for the actual construction portion. For example, if you have an emergency condition, you would have about 30 days to apply for permits. If you have a non-emergency condition, you would have 120 days to apply for any necessary permits.
So you said your company, Dr. Balcony, you all just do the inspections, correct? You don't do actual any of the work itself?
We will do the inspections and we will help with the permit application as well and
Okay.
the architectural work, the engineering work as well.
Okay.
So we do that first part, and then what we do is that we have a network of contractors that we vetted that come from recommendations from our clients we've worked with before, and that way, we don't want to leave you in the dark. We want to give you someone that's going to be able to do this work for you, and you can get bids from our network of contractors, compare them, and pick the person for you.
Okay. What are some of the warning signs property owners should be looking out for? So, what should we be looking to see if, hey, there may be a problem here on one of my balconies or stairs?
Yeah, water staining is going to be a big one. That what you're worried about is going to be the rotted wood, right? But you can't typically see that because of the stucco. So if there's water staining, there's typically going to be rotted wood on the inside. Something else is cracks that might allow for water penetration, or any sort of rusting, or sometimes you may even have visible rotting wood, just depending on your balcony.
Now, do you all actually cut through the stucco for the inspection?
So we've actually patented our inspection process, which is to drill a small hole. It's going to be about the size of a nickel, about 1 inch in diameter, and it's going to be about 2 to 3 inches deep, just right through that stucco. We're going to insert a boroscope camera that's going to take detailed images of what is going on inside of your balcony or walkway, see if there's any rotting, any rusted bolts, and then we're going to plug that back up, and those photos are all going to be included in your report.
Okay. Speaking of which, tell us about your report. Can you kind of give us an overview of the inspection process? So I've called you. I've decided, hey, Greg, we want to hire Dr. Balcony to conduct the inspection. Can you walk us through a typical inspection process?
Yeah, of course. So we're going to coordinate your inspection with you, depending on if it's a SB326 or an SB721. For the SB326, you're typically going to have to coordinate maybe a couple of weeks ahead of time, because the hardest part is getting access to those units in order to, you know, see the balconies. Once our inspector arrives, he's going to visually inspect every single exterior elevated element for the SB326, and then a certain percentage for the SB721. He's going to take measurements of the railing, look for any cracks, look for any, those signs of deterioration that we were speaking of earlier. He's going to look for those warning signs. Like I said, conduct an inspection from the top, and then from the bottom, drill that small hole, insert that camera, take those photos, and after that, he submits it to our app. We've actually developed an app as well that uses AI. The app is going to walk him through the inspection, and once he submits that, the app is going to generate a report for us that is going to be checked through our quality control engineer. Typically, about two quality control engineers are going to look at that as well. And finally, our architect and our senior engineer are going to stamp that inspection report after they approve it, and you receive your report.
So once I get this report, do I submit it to the local jurisdiction or is that something you all do? What about that part of it?
So the ordinance does ask the company that is doing the inspections to send it to the local jurisdictions. So if there's an emergency condition, we're going to have to send that to the local jurisdiction within 15 days. If there is a non-emergency condition, within 120 days. If it is a pass, however, or most local jurisdictions are not focusing on those at the moment. They're waiting until next year to focus on those. So what you have to do if you pass is you have to keep it in your records for 2 cycles, which is going to be 12 years for SB721 and 18 years for the SB326.
So these two Senate bills, 721 and 326, they require the inspection once every 6 years for every building. Is that correct?
So once every 6 years for apartments, once every 9 years for condos, because the condos are 100% inspection, 95% confidence rate. It's a much more thorough inspection. For the apartments, since it's only 15%, it's only every 6 years.
So It's a lot that needs to be done, but again, going back to why we are where we are, right? We had a balcony collapse, a 9-year-old building, which most of us would agree that is not an old building at all. But you don't know what's happening. You don't know during the construction process what did or did not happen. So you had several kids die from this incident, and so I'm sure a lot of owners don't like to be sued. Most people don't like to be sued, and this is, at the very least, this is a way to prevent getting fined. But it's also a way to prevent unnecessary death and bodily injury, and to make sure that you're providing a safe, habitable unit to the tenants and to the owners of the condos. And so it's a very important rule, and I think that it needs to be done. And it sounds like there are a lot of resources out there, but since not many people know about it, there's potentially 500,000 units or buildings out there. This is going to be an insane next few months. I mean, you could potentially call a place and they might not have, like, what if I were to call you today? When would you be able to come out to do the inspection?
So, the good thing is we have found a way to keep expanding our team with the increasing demand for these inspections. So I want to say maybe 1 year ago we were doing 4 inspections per week. Right now we're doing about 20 inspections per week. I mean, sorry,
Wow,
20 inspections per day.
per day.
20
That
inspections per day, 15 to
is a
20.
lot of inspections.
So we've multiplied our numbers quite a bit. I would say that if you called us right now, we can schedule you usually about 2 weeks. End of July is a good time frame. You want to give your tenants enough time to prepare, and then also we, like I said, since we're expanding our team, usually we're able to keep booking more and more inspections.
And you guys have been around, and you guys aren't just someone who's going to pop up January 1st as an opportunity for another business. You guys have been doing this for a while. You guys have an extensive team that's behind you doing all the work. So you want someone like Dr. Balcony coming out, making sure they're inspecting it. It's done by the right people with the right experience. Uh, Again, going back, the lawyer hat in me is always looking at things from a lawyer's perspective, which is liability. You want someone who knows what they're doing and is experienced. And so you want to make sure, I'm talking with the property owners out there, you want to make sure you go to someone who has that experience, who understands what they're doing, because this isn't a simple cosmetic thing. This is really a, fire and life and safety issue for most people.
Yeah, 100%. And we're trying to be the leaders in this industry. Like I said, there's no conflict of interest with us. We're only going to do your inspection, and we're not going to be in it, for the construction portion as well. I believe we've done more inspections than any other company to date. We've completed over 1,400 projects to date. And yeah, we'd love to help as many people as we can.
Can you tell us approximately the cost of these inspections, or is that something they need to call in and kind of dependent on the
Yeah, I
building?
mean, they range just because we have anywhere from 3 units to our biggest project so far has been 350 units. It depends on whether you're an apartment, you're an HOA. So yeah, it really depends. What I will say is that Dr. Balcony is known to have pretty competitive pricing, and not only that, but if anyone were to give us a proposal, we always not only price match, but we will beat it. We wanna be the most competitive company out there. We want every project possible. We understand even if we lose money on a project, that builds a relationship. The apartment owner community is very tight knit, and typically we might lose a little money on this client, but then she's gonna recommend us to her friends, and we will get another 7 or 8 projects from that. And I believe actually 30% of our clients right now are through referrals. So that's a pretty big amount. It's definitely our biggest source of clients. So we want to keep that up, and we will do our best to work with you on your budget.
That sounds great. So to kind of recap, these two Senate bills, or commonly known as the balcony laws, the deadline for the reports is the end of this year, and non-compliance for the property owners is you're looking at potentially $100 to $500 a day in fees, or in penalties, I should say. So the sooner you get out there, You call someone like Dr. Balcony to come out there. You'll be in compliance. You'll make sure you have a safe and habitable building. And so I'm just going to end it with, can you tell us how someone can reach out to Dr. Balcony?
Yeah, so the easiest way would be to visit our website, drbalcony.com. You can email us at info@drbalcony.com as well. You can call us. I don't know if you can write the number.
I'll put it all in the, down there for sure.
But yeah, give us a call. We can answer any questions, whether it's about just seeing if you need an inspection or getting a price. A lot of people don't like calling someone, getting a price, and then, hey, we're calling you every two days. So what you can also do is visit our website, drbalcony.com. You're going to take a quick little survey. It takes about 5 minutes or so. It'll give you an instant pricing, instant availability, anything that you need. It'll give you the contract. You can do it all yourself online. Typically the easiest way.
Yeah, drbalcony.com. And do you have any? Are you guys active on social media?
We try to post on social media every day.
Okay.
Instagram especially, Twitter, YouTube. It's Dr. Balcony everywhere. Dr. Balcony.
Wonderful. Greg, thank you again. It was a pleasure for you to come out here for us and educating us on these new Senate bills. And we look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
You too.